Alright, boa noite, boa tarde ou bom dia, depende de que hora do ac. Welcome no outro episódio de Barbá Cu Dos Mic. Serem hier com outro com o Alex Nickel Bowen. Baixista eu conheci na Aruba. Trago diferente banda local e internacional. Com o local depende que ele trago com o Liam Shankel de Active Mirror.
Don't you ever look back.
Também ele trago com o internacional com o Rick Beato e dentro da banda internacional com o Furyon. So Alex, how are you? How's it going? It's been quite a while, man.
I'm doing well. Welcome to my makeshift studio. Enough space to swing a cat, I think. But you fit all your gear in here. Fantastic. Well done.
So tell me, man, how did you start in music? Dus kom wat dentro de muziek.
Music for me started when I was about the age of 6. My parents wanted me to, I don't know, do sports and do some activities that might, you never know, improve my mental being or find a form of escapism, but really young. So they had me play piano as a kid growing up. So my first memory of playing music is picking up a really, really old keyboard from an electronics shop on Calle Batica Cruz, now Calle Grande, as we would say. Yeah. Shop is probably still there, I think. But the keyboard I don't have anymore, I'm afraid. I did lessons very strictly. I had to work on my posture, of course. The discipline of playing piano, yes, of course. Yeah. Hands flat on the keys. So yeah, my first memory of playing music was.
They also did the tennis ball exercise where you had to.
Ooh, no, I did not. I have tried them later on in life because some guitar players or bass players insist on it being necessary, but
does it really help? Or
no? Let's face it, the best practice will always be with the instrument itself.
Just have fun with it.
Yeah, as long as you can get a good tone from your left hand or right hand, or combined, of course, then yeah, you've done your job. That's exercise enough. But later on, did piano for probably about 4 or 5 years before I was influenced by my own taste in music. Of course, very heavy metal.
Yeah.
My first record was Sepultura's Arise. So that's a bit heavy for like an 11, 12-year-old, if you can imagine.
Were you always drawn to heavy metal music, or?
Yeah. I've inherited my father's record collection, and I'll show you more records later. But it was mainly rock, hard rock, and blues at home. There were other styles as well. My father would always have salsa music and other world music, as some people would call it. But the main drive for me growing up in music was blues and hard rock. Black Sabbath and Rory Gallagher basically was what I grew up on.
But now you're just stuck with bass, or you still play piano? Or?
Well, let's put it this way. As we were chatting before before this, as soon as I picked up a bass, I pretty much ignored the world, honestly.
But was it you use it as an escape, or just that?
It was just so much fun. Time would fly and I wouldn't notice.
And you still enjoy it, right?
As soon as I got a new bass, trust me, it would be in the bed with me under the covers. It would be on a pillow. Don't worry.
Own pillow.
I'm a considerate bass player. But yeah,
you make sure the room temperature is perfect.
Of course, everything. Yeah, the humidity was just right. No, but it basically took over my entire life. I just wanted to invest as much time into it as I possibly could because I was just having too much fun.
I think most people that know you were very close to your father, Mr. Steve Bowen.
Oh, yeah.
And how was that relationship?
I had a very, I come from a position of privilege in that respect. I had a very loving father, a very academic and very intelligent father who was very, very supportive. So as soon as I turned to him and said, Dad, I want to study music at a university or college level, you know, some parents would go, what are you thinking? Be a doctor or be a dentist? he said, go for it. Because he knew, he can see in my eyes straight away going, this kid really wants it. And he supported me from start to finish. So if anything, I'm the luckiest man on the planet.
Yeah, because I met your father, I think, a couple of times in
yeah.
He was a chill, but straight to the point kind of guy, right?
Yes, definitely. Outside work, he'd be very relaxed. Let's face it, there'd be a beer in one hand, and he'd be leaning on the bar with the other arm. But at work, he's very stern, to the point. I tend to be a bit like that too when I'm focused on doing business or being professional. There is a time to have fun and chat, but in the workplace, you got to get to the point sometimes.
Yeah. And what's your most cherished moment you have with your father?
Wow. Okay, that's
if you have to choose one, at the top of your head.
I've had many. Honestly, to pick one would do the others injustice. Just to travel with him, spend time with him. Honestly, we'd be drinking through his whiskey collection till about 4 a.m, just talking. Honestly, it sounds very, very silly, but if you had ever met my father, then any conversation at any length would be a lot of fun, regardless of the circumstances.
Something I've always been curious about, your nickname, Nickel. Where did that come to? How did that came to be?
I never had that nickname growing up in Aruba. My middle name is Nicholas, so there is a tie there, but it's not to do with that. Growing up, of course, a lot of people remember me having long hair down to, well, pretty much my belly button. But I ended up having a long beard as well, inspired by Dimebag from Pantera.
Yeah.
Very big Pantera fan. That was basically all I wanted to play growing up.
Walk! What did you say? Respect! Walk! Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?
Or at least be like Dimebag, even though he's a guitarist. It sounds very odd. Very, very inspiring musician in general. But I dyed the beard red like Dimebag. So when I ended up going to music college in Brighton, in England, a couple of people who went to the music college, the drinking culture in England, you go to a pub.
Yeah.
So I had a pub chatting with some other musicians that went to the same college. They said, Alex, what's your nickname? I went, don't have one. Just never had one. Just Alex. They said, what are you into? So I explained my Dimebag influence. They said, we'll call you Dime then. I said, well, don't call me Dime. I will never live up to that name. They said, we'll call you Half a Dime.
So
A nickel.
A nickel.
Sounds cheap. But the story is true.
It's quite interesting story to tell about.
Yeah, it was over a couple of drinks, which is
And speaking about
gonna happen.
And speaking about Pantera, what other bands were your inspiration to?
Growing up, I already mentioned Sepultura. A lot of the thrash bands I was into growing up. So Megadeth, Anthrax, Sepultura, and Pantera was pretty new on the scene. Everyone else that I considered a close friend was either into Korn or into the new metal stuff, because we are talking the 90s.
Yeah.
Late 90s,
Korn,
early 2000s. So Korn was everywhere. Slipknot was new on the scene, and I was still into Pantera. The new metal was definitely a great time for heavy metal in the sense of bringing new people in. Linkin Park is a great example. People
also
who would
Aruba,
never have listened to heavy metal in their lives would have listened to Linkin Park and thought, I like this. And then it leads to other bands. But I was already too far deep down the rabbit hole. Yeah, I was listening to some pretty heavy stuff growing up.
And there was a huge era in Aruba where late 90s and early 2000s, huge rock scene back then. It's always Korn and Biscuit, Slipknot, Linkin Park, and the group. I think My Chemical Romance came.
That would have been a bit later.
A bit after,
yeah, everyone was into Korn. Playing with Candy back in the day at a venue known as Black Hog Saloon, which is now a supermarket.
Superfoods.
Yeah.
For those who know Superfood.
Yeah,
It's no Superfood.
Not sponsored, but every time I walk into the dairy section, I go, that's where I would have played. It's really sad.
Yeah. Hey, if not in the right place, there was also Adventure Golf there. So
of course, yeah. If you didn't like drinking alcohol or watching live music, you can always play miniature golf.
And swim in those horrible waters. Do you remember how green the water was?
I would never suggest that. Bumper boats were good, though. They were always fun.
And I see you have
later, though.
I also see you have like a huge collection there of pedals.
Oh, yes.
And you also mentioned on your social you're a huge pedal collector and records collector.
Oh, yes. Okay, I don't have all my records in this room, but I've managed to put all my pedals together for the first time, actually.
What's the most cherished pedal if you have?
Ooh.
The one that's...
Probably this one. This is one by Justin Chancellor. This is signature pedal. See, Crybaby is a wah pedal for people who are musicians. Effectively, it takes the mid of the EQ and brings it up and down. That's effectively what this does.
But every time you step on it, then...
Yep, you basically affect the mid-range or the mid-frequency of the instrument you're plugging into, of course. But this one's dedicated to bass, and it's by the bass player of Tool, of which I'm a big fan of, which is another one I really enjoyed listening to growing up and still really, really enjoy. This has a couple of other settings, which is either fuzz or some form of distortion. So... yeah, it's just a really fun toy, really.
About the records, what was the most cherished record you have?
Okay. My record collection started with inheriting my father's record collection. I say inherited because my father's sadly no longer with us. But he had in excess of 350 LPs and probably about 20 to 30 singles, like those smaller discs. His collection was quite varied, but if I was to pick one that really stands out, Hey You by Pink Floyd would be up there. It's a song that reminds me a lot of my father, so I tend to cherish that one a little bit. But since then, I've added it to it myself. I've gotten rid of my Spotify subscription, pardon me, because I wasn't listening to anything new, so I just decided, screw it. I'll just pick up records instead, listen to that when I can. But if I were to pick one, yeah, definitely be Pink Floyd. One. I've got The Wall, Dark Side of the Moon twice.
You have
Hey
two
You,
copies?
I've got twice.
But you 2 copies of it. But the same copy or different versions?
They would have been a couple of years apart. Pretty much 90% of these records that I've inherited are purchased in the UK when my father was growing up, growing up in Ipswich in England. And the collection is quite vast. But you got to remember back then, if you can't find a record in a large collection, you probably think you've lost it. So what are you going to do? You're going to buy it again. Or if you love the album so much, you've probably played it to death and you thought, this one's quite scratched.
Yeah, because
let me get another one.
Over time.
Oh, yes. So you've got to take very good care of them.
And how did you meet Rick Beato? Because you've
Rick
worked
Beato.
with him.
Okay. Where to start? Well, I was already in Furyon for about a year or two until we decided to hunker down and focus on making an album. Making an album back then was still relevant compared to today, where they pretty much release singles. More routinely. But we decided to do it with a proper producer. We ended up having a chat with Kip Winger, who's mainly known for being a front man of I would say, hair band of the 90s, you could say. She's Only 17 is a very famous song from theirs. But he's a very good friend of our guitarist, Chris Green. And he ended up asking Kip Winger, we're kind of looking for this shine down kind of production style. And Kip said, should have told me, I know the producer, Rick Beato. Here's his number. So we ended up chatting with Rick Beato. And he was up for doing an album, and we were stoked. We were over the moon. And within probably about 4 or 5 months, we flew out to Atlanta to record an album.
Oh, so he stayed there? You guys went to him?
Oh, we went to him, yeah. Oh. He has a very large studio, which you can probably see on his YouTube channel.
But is that the same studio he uses?
Precisely, yeah. I watch a lot of his YouTube videos going, I was there. I went there. He has a very large collection of guitar amps. The entire experience was eye-opening for me because I'd never been in a studio of that size or stature or quality. So for me, it was a step up, and I had to step up as a musician myself, you know.
And his studio's quite big.
Massive. We would do every song. Well, we started with every song playing together live. Okay, it's 2 a click, but we're playing live, so we're feeding off each other still. The vocalist would be in a separate room. The guitarist and maybe bass player might be in the same room, but the drummer is on the other side of the house in a separate room altogether. So then, of course, you'd have a take for each instrument. So you're still recording every instrument, but mainly focusing on the drums, which would then later on be, what's the word I'm looking for? Quantized. They would be quantized because precision is the sign of quality, I guess. Although I kind of still prefer a bit of sloppiness, if you know what I mean. It makes it more human.
Yeah.
But that was his style. That was his approach. And it worked out well. We ended up also writing a song with him and recording it within a day, which ended up being our single, Disappear Again.
But so how do you pronounce it? Furyon or Furyon?
Furyon.
Furyon.
Yeah.
So how was it, man? How was it working with a band like that?
Well, all you got to do is listen to the musicianship in the band, and you can hear the quality. So for me, going to a music college, living in Brighton, I was in a band within 2 days of moving to Brighton, if you can imagine. Walked to a rock t-shirt shop, and the guy in the shop said, "What are you doing in Brighton?" "Going to the music college." "What do you play?" "Bass." "What are you doing tonight?" There you go, in a band. So with that band, I ended up opening for other bands at local shows. And of course, you can see which bands are at a particular level, which band is going places, which bands maybe not. And thankfully, I was able to have an audition when the original bass player had left. He moved to Chicago. So there was a vacancy. I was already friends with the singer at that time, as I'd opened for Furyon, I think on 2 occasions. So I just said, "Why don't you call me?"
But when was this?
This would have been 2007, probably, roughly. Yeah, I would say about 2007. Got a random call from the guitarist saying, "What are you doing tonight?" I was just at home, chilling, watching football. And I said, "Well, I guess I'm auditioning with you guys." Clearly it was a success, because otherwise I wouldn't have been in the band. But yeah, it basically led to me joining a band full of proper seasoned musicians, which is where I wanted to be at the time.
And you guys released 2 albums with Furyon?
We did 2 albums. Both were produced by Rick. The first was recorded at his studio. The second, we had less of a budget. So we ended up recording them at individual studios in and around the Brighton area. And but everything was mixed and mastered by Rick Beato.
But the second album was Gravitas. So
First one was called Gravitas.
And the second one was...
I'll take credit for naming that one.
What's the story behind that?
Already came up with a font. Actually, I've got the album here, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I'd already come up with a font for the name. And yeah, it basically means depth or weight in character. This was released worldwide. There was even Japanese releases with translated lyrics, which I've not managed to get a copy of.
But not even on eBay?
Nope.
But see, they still sell those CDs, and you can still get them on Amazon.
They're still available, yeah. I understand.
Amazon, yeah.
I probably won't get a penny, but don't worry about that. A fan of ours in Scotland managed to get a copy of the Japanese translations, and I signed it, and that was the nearest I would get to holding a copy. Yeah. Frontier Records sadly didn't give us a copy.
No. And like I said, before all this, you played in a band, in a Ruben band, Candy, right?
Yep. Sounds like a stripper name, doesn't it?
So what can you tell me about Mouse?
Mouse. Okay, I was not the original member in Candy either. I'm just the guy that shows up and does the job, if you know what I mean. But I know of all the guys that started in the band, and I think it's referring to Jeremy, the vocalist. Yeah. Is his nickname Mouse. He's clearly a very tall guy. I'm joking. Mouse is just an accumulation of 3 riffs. It couldn't be more similar to Korn. They glued them together and made it work.
But was that the intention, or just came to influence?
I cannot tell you. I wasn't there at the time, but I can tell you that all the guys were listening to was Freak on a Leash, Life is Peachy. What's the first Korn album again? I think it's just called Korn.
Yeah, the first one, Blind was the most.
There you go. Everyone's played Blind to death.
And they still do, man. They still do.
Are you ready?
But everyone at the time was really enjoying Korn. And again, bands like Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park were very much in the forefront in every rocker's mind in Aruba.
Especially when Meteora came out.
Meteora?
Yeah, the second
Linkin
album
Park,
from Linkin Park. Yeah.
Right.
That's when the whole thing blew up.
Big time. Again, very, very catchy choruses, easy to sing along. But again, it had distorted guitars. So it was like entry-level heavy metal for a lot of kids growing up. And of course, it had the typical teenage drama with the vocals, if you know what I mean. Come on, we know what they were doing.
Yeah. Next to that, you also work with Marlon Dubero with Madurá.
Madurá, yeah.
So
that was an experience. I've worked with Marlon before. My first ever band was a band called Immune.
When I feel my soul is leaving my skin, I know that
with Erwin Cruz as vocalist. If you know the famous chef.
When was this again?
Wow.
I remember the name.
Immune, again, had a different bass player before I joined. Story of my life. Good question. When the year was, it would have been 2000.
So early 2000.
2000.
Around
Early
the same year,
2000s,
because you had the band also According to Nature.
According to
So
Nature
I
would have
think
come
Aymar,
later.
They
Would have come a bit later, yeah. You got to remember, I was in bands with adults, and every kid my age, like these guys from A2N, were playing as young teenagers or barely teenagers. I was just in rooms with adults the entire time. I was always the kid in the room who's justifiably playing bass, I think, or I hope. But working with Marlon, that was my first experience working with him. He was a vocalist at the time, and he still is. He's definitely a very creative guy.
Yeah, he's a multi-talented guy. Right?
Oh, yes, multifaceted as well.
He's also in the fashion world also, right?
He does his own fashion. I actually did a runway with his clothing once. That was an experience.
Was that in art last year's art fair? Or?
That would have been several years ago.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
But it took place in St. Nicholas.
Yeah, I think it was art fair.
It would have been outdoors. Very intimidating for a person outside of the fashion world. As you can imagine, I only hung around with alternative people, or who are considered alternative from the outside, who I consider very normal. If anything, more normal than the others. But yeah, quite an experience, eye-opening.
But Marlon is also a big, like, intimidating looking guy.
Oh, he's a presence.
And now we come to a segment they call the game for the game show.
The game show, okay.
Rádio Botinha. So the rules of the game is simple.
Okay.
I'm just gonna give you two options. You just have to choose which one you.
Thank you for the multiple
choice. For you,
choice.
Is the best one, and then elaborate why you think it.
Oh, okay.
So you have
No
to.
problem.
You have to. So the first one, right? Vou dar para pergunta 1. Q1. Alfie's Bean Burger or Beyond Burger?
Ooh, okay. That's a tough one. The Beyond Beef had come out not long ago, so definitely it was high up on my radar because I don't eat beef. So when that came up, yeah, having a chat with Amal, hey, do a Bowen burger, do with a non-cow patty, peanut butter and hot sauce. You can't lose. Either which is pretty good. They both have different textures. I would say the Beyond Beef, even though it's something I probably wouldn't eat that regularly. But when on occasions, when at Alfie's, come on.
It's good. Man.
If you're going to go for the Bowen burger, do it with the Beyond.
Craft beer or regular?
I'm definitely more of a traditionalist. Very big on the Belgian style beers, which of course have been around for millennia.
The foamy ones, right?
Yeah, bit of foam. A lot of English people tend not to drink beer with the foam. It tends to take away from the amount you're spending on the beer. Well, that's at least the mentality.
Economicamente.
Economicamente, yeah. Thinking about their money spent as opposed to the quality of the beer. But the beer in England clearly is very different. An ale or a traditional ale wouldn't have a head or much of a head anyway. But I definitely grew up preferring the Trappist style beers. But living in England, if there was a beer that I drank frequently, it would be Guinness and Guinness on tap.
Yeah, let's continue. Raj, with a third question. Fender or Ibanez bass?
Ooh, okay. Very simple to answer. I own more Ibanez basses than I do Fender basses. So there you go. That's
speaks
very
more
easy.
than.
I have always in my life had an Ibanez bass since I have started playing bass. My first ever bass was Ibanez. It was a passive 4-string bass, very much a beginner bass. I was very ambitious growing up, so I thought, screw it, I'll go for a 6-string. As a teenager, a lot of people just don't do that. It's very odd. People generally don't play 6-string basses
Mostly
at all. And I grew up with one. And they've always been Ibanez. I've had Warwick over the years. I've had an LTD, ESP. I'm just saying a bunch of letters now, if it helps.
No, we can edit it, put something.
Fair enough. We'll put some logos up. ESP, LTD. Some really interesting basses, but I've always gone back to what I consider home. Ibanez is my home. It's definitely my go-to bass because it's very dynamic. Allows me to manipulate the sound more easily because it's an active sound. You can adjust it more easily. You have a lot more control over it, which is what I'm trying to say. Fender has a place in my heart, so it's hard to say one or the other. If anything, I'll probably pick up another Fender in a couple of months. Don't tell my other half. It's okay. I'll put it in a really old guitar case and hide it when I walk in.
And for the public, no, this is not sponsored by Ibanez nor Fender.
No, it would be nice though.
It would be nice. Yeah, it would be nice.
Give us a call.
We're open. Just give them a call, and
My number is.
we can make it happen.
But I've been playing Fenders now for a couple of years. For some reason, I've avoided it for so long because it's not very heavy metal. But of course, if you're going to play bass in Aruba, you're not just going to play heavy metal. You're going to play other styles of music. And if you're going to play other styles of music, you need other styles of instruments. So there is a time and place for both. But Ibanez is a little bit closer to my heart.
And Reggie, with the next question. The short hair or long hair like mine?
Well, I've had long hair pretty much my entire adult life, my entire teenage life, besides the time where I cut it short, coming to about maybe 4 and a bit years ago. A complete drastic change. As soon as I cut my hair, I was still putting the t-shirts on and getting the hair out of the way, if you know what I mean. But all the habits of doing this, putting the hair behind the ears.
Why did you cut your hair?
Why did I cut my hair? I just wanted to change. I had a lot of split ends, so the hair wasn't really at a standard, if you can say. I just wanted to change to see what it's like. I've never had short hair as an adult, so I thought, give it a try. I quite enjoyed it for a while. But
especially with the heat in Aruba, so
that never really bothered me. My hair's really thin anyway, blonde and thin. So there's really not much you can do with it. As heat wise, not really a bother. If anything, the wind bothers me more than the heat. Because of course, if you don't have your hair tied up, it's just going to go all over your face, of course. And especially if you're playing music, then yeah, it's going to get stuck to your forehead the entire night, and you're going to try and play your instrument and get out of the way the entire time. But
have you played with long hair in Old Dutch Cafe?
That
place is hot.
If I did, it would have been before 2006.
That place is hot.
Very, very hot. I had played there since then with short hair, but that's a sweatbox.
Yeah,
that is a sweatbox.
It's always been like that.
Ironically, I don't know if the camera can switch to this, but I got a poster up on the wall of a Furyon gig when we had our album launch. And that was probably the sweatiest gig I've ever played in my life.
Jesus.
Honestly, take the shirt off. You can rinse it off.
Jesus.
Yeah, water would pour from the shirt. But ironically, the venue is called The Hydrant.
It makes sense. And last question, Q5. King Kenny.
Or Mohamed Salah. Ooh, okay, well, one is clearly more successful than the other. King Kenny, I've got to say. Mind you, they have a stand named after Sir Kenny Dalglish. He has been knighted. But Mo Salah is going to get a statue. It's very close. It's too close to really say comfortably, but I would say Kenny.
But next year, Salah thought he was going to leave Liverpool too.
He did. He dropped it in a random interview a couple of weeks back that there had been no renewal to his contract, which ends next summer in 2025. But of course, it's all negotiations. It might have been done tactfully by him. He might just say, "Hey, you haven't mentioned anything yet," and then suddenly the club pays attention and the whole world focuses on it and makes news out of it. But if he stays or goes, then yeah, I would never feel any hard feelings for him. He's a legend. Yeah. He's a walking and living legend in my eyes.
And that was it with the game. That
was easy questions. All right.
Easy question.
No? Nothing about science.
And we talk. One of the first questions we talk about the burger.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to talk about specifically the Bowen burger.
Getting hungry now.
I went to Alfie's last night.
Okay.
Just to try this.
Oh, right. Did you have it with the hot dust?
No, yeah.
You did? Okay.
But Amal told me to keep it low on the hot dust.
Yeah, you got to be very cautious with that. You got to be very careful.
When I start eating it, I think the first 2 bites, it's not that bad. It's not that spicy.
Like,
Third bite, okay, I'm starting sweet. I think by when there was 2 or 3 more bites left, I started sweating. And Jesus, what the
it's
fuck
an experience.
And
it's an out-of-body experience.
It's delicious as fuck.
Very tasty. Yeah, spice and peanut butter is something that I really, really enjoy. Honestly, like a snack, just crackers, peanut butter, and
there's some jelly in it too, right? There was something sweet,
Well, they probably put tomatoes in it. That would be a sweet element to that. Peanut butter itself tends to be pretty sweet, especially if you don't make it yourself. Or just get it from a jar, in other words. But yeah, it's a combination of sweet, spicy, savory, of course. The texture you get from the patty itself, which tries to replicate the beef.
I'm not vegan, so usually, but the texture, the taste, even the look just looks like meat.
They're pulling it off.
They're pulling it off because, like, if they gave me that, and then
didn't tell you,
and didn't tell me anything, I won't.
Yeah, you'd probably be fooled. Sometimes, like nowadays, because of course I avoid eating animal products, I would be in a restaurant and they would say on the menu that it is purely plant-based. And when I get it, and the texture is so authentic to what beef, as I remember it being, that I think, hang on, am I being fooled right now?
I mean,
sometimes it's that authentic. Sometimes it's a dead giveaway. But sometimes they do nail it, and you probably question yourself a little bit.
No, but the Bowen burger was tasty.
It's so great. You enjoy it twice. Let's face it. Well, it goes in spicy.
Oh yeah.
Just saying. Yeah. Oh, Reggie's got a laugh.
For those of Reggie,
I got a laugh out of Reggie.
If it burns, if it burns coming in, it's gonna burn coming out.
Oh, yeah. Indeed, enjoy it twice. Yeah, be about 6,000 times hotter than a jalapeno. I've got some of the sauces here at home. I've got the bomb. I've got the end flat line.
You have the bomb?
Yeah. Do you want to try some?
I'm gonna die into it.
Well, you're not going to do an interview. That's
not for an interview. Behind the cameras, maybe.
Ironically, I find the bomb to be more intense than the extremely hot ones because it contains the actual fruit itself from the pepper. Some of the concentrated stuff is just chemical and it doesn't linger as long. If you can imagine like having pico di papaya with a rice dish or something, the heat from the Scotch bonnet tends to linger. It sticks around. But
especially
when
it starts going behind in your throat.
Yes.
Because the bone one, the seed stays in front of you, the tip of the tongue mostly.
Okay, well, the heat that comes from the burger is with the hot dust, which is comes in like a powder form, which is dried chilies and then crushed down. So you're not going to get seeds unless Amal decides to put them in there, which I'm not involved with. I leave the creative part and the culinary aspect to them, of course. Leave it to the professionals. But yeah, definitely not for the novice.
I'm starting getting hungry talking about all this food.
I'm getting sweaty thinking about
the heat. So to head over to food, last week there were Battle of the Bands.
Oh yeah,
and you were a judge. How was that came to be?
That was a very interesting experience. Being on the other side of the table is definitely less intimidating. I've been in a Battle of the Bands before with Candy. Ironically, that was our first push to the limelight, I guess.
Which one was the one they did in Eagle Beach? Or
it was the one at Mumba Beach. Yeah, it was televised on RTV, channel 15.
I think you still can find a clip of it in YouTube.
It's still online. It's there somewhere. You'll have to do a bit of digging, but it's definitely there. but that was 2001. And that was on the beach at high noon. That was a very hot day. Very hot gig. We ended up winning it, which is clearly a very good experience as a musician, but definitely intimidating. So being on the other side is a lot easier, we'll put it that way. Thankfully, with the years of playing music and having been in their shoes and having toured like crazy, and with the people I was working with at the time, with Kevin De Silva, we were with Karen, we were with
Amal.
With Amal as well, pardon me. Yeah, great experience. Great people to work with. But we're definitely prepared. We had a lot of points to focus on. Pardon me, Carol. What am I talking about? Karen. Anyway, Carol Ford. Yeah, we had all the key points to focus on. We had met before and decided on what to focus on, because a lot of these kids were on stage for the first time, which is commendable. Utmost respect for everyone who performed on the day. But there were clearly some musicians who had performed or performed before on a stage, or a bit more educated in music, or had spent a bit more time learning their craft. But it wasn't a battle of the musicians, it was a battle of the bands. So at the end of the day, we had to choose which band stood out or was the most exceptional of the bunch.
And the winner was, Circle of Fifth was
Circle
the winner?
of Fifth was the eventual winner. There was a lot of talent on the stage, so I wouldn't really want to say who came second place or not, because that wasn't announced on the day. But some of us had a few disagreements as to what stood out best about different bands between the judges. So it was thankfully not too long a deliberation, but we could have sat there for a few hours.
You guys sat in during the show 50 minutes. Then you guys took about around 30 minutes.
I think it probably took about a half hour.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, we chose the right band. Clearly, they were educated in music. I think many of them went to the music school at Cas di Cultura, and it was obvious. They showed up on stage. They knew what they were doing. They were comfortable in their own skin. Clearly, there was some aspects of the performance that we could critique on, but again, we just wanted to promote the idea of playing live to the kids.
And this was the first of many years.
I believe it'd be the first Battle of the Bands at Cas di Cultura. Would be the first annual one, I guess.
But was this organized by Cas di Cultura itself, or?
Well, from what I understand, it's behind Secret Agent Music, which is Amal Farhat's organization. Yeah. Of course, you know them, you know her, pardon me, for managing Active Mirror, Liam Kelly's band. But they don't just run a music venue and manage one band. They also have a label put together. So I think that was under Secret Agent as opposed to Amal as an individual. But yeah, Amal had a heavy hand in this one. And of course, Cas di Cultura themselves. Yeah.
And will you, if they still do it again next year, will you judge again? Or?
If they have me, yeah, I'll happily jump on board. Assuming there is another one, yeah, definitely. I wouldn't think twice. Assuming there are, of course, more bands playing. You never know, might see a band from this year performing next year that have leveled up, if you know what I mean, that have stepped up and learned from their experiences or gained more experiences and therefore be able to show it. Okay, well, at the end of the day, there were only 5 acts on a stage to promote children to join in with bands if they haven't joined in a band already, and to put them on a stage in front of a crowd. And if anything, that was the goal, as opposed to deciding on who the winner is and pushing a winner, which of course they do deserve. Don't get me wrong, but to see 5 bands on a stage,
it was a great piece.
I really enjoyed it. Some of the acts I was really blown away. Did not expect to have such a varying amount of emotions. I did not expect that.
So I remember the last band, the last group that played, they did a rock song in Papia. It's quite hard to do. But
I think there was also a take on a Gorillaz cover, which is quite interesting. Yeah, really, really interesting. The 1986 Sus, I think was the name of the band.
Yes, yeah. Because remember
when,
you had Escudo Coral.
That's when grunge started.
Yeah,
1986. I was given the explanation afterwards. I'm afraid I wasn't given any context about any of the bands beforehand. Sadly,
so everything was a surprise to you.
That might have distorted my view upon the performance anyway. So probably best to have kept it that way. But yeah, apparently that's based on grunge starting and the end of hair metal or glam rock, so to speak. But also the year of Pac-Man. So if you recall, on the stage they had little Pac-Man, Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Man on the stage with different
86 was
characters.
Also, do you know if it was also something met with the Aruba community?
My first thought was, does this
that's
have to do
the
with
first thing that
Aruba's separation from the Antilles? But apparently not.
No
association.
That's a big surprise.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah.
But definitely a grunge, an homage to grunge, so to speak.
But the show that night was really great, man. We really truly enjoyed it.
It's just amazing seeing kids on the stage pouring their hearts out. It's fantastic.
And yeah, I mean, the last time I went to a Battle of the Band was the early 2000s. Back when they did it, and Club Havana they did it a bunch of times.
Now we're going back.
Was
That's
Eagle
Nikki
Beach,
Beach
the
now.
one at Moomba.
Yep.
I think that was the last one I went was when Quebec won.
I see.
A long time ago.
A lot of the guys that were performing when the Mechalicious in 2001 at Moomba Beach took place, a lot of those musicians are proper musicians today. So you can tell that it had a really big push or effect on them, or a positive experience for them to grow on.
Unless we can talk for more hours to go, but
well, I'm at home.
Have to end it. So now, before the last question I have for the interview was, do you think England will bring it home next?
Okay, now you're just being cheeky.
Next World Cup, do you?
My heart says yes. My head, maybe not. Clearly a very talented group of players. It'd be a shame to see that group of talent not winning a trophy. But the culture of winning international trophies is not really in the blood, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Brazilians grow up looking back 10 years ago before they had won a trophy. Italians are very similar. They can have a very poor tournament and then win the next one. Germans are very similar in that respect, maybe a bit more successful than most European nations. Again, my heart says yes. It can be done. Sometimes you just need a bit of luck, I guess.
Yeah, willpower. Mostly luck.
Well, motivation is definitely there. They clearly want to win it. But there are different ways of winning a football match, and they just haven't found it yet.
Right, and that was it, basically. Do you have anything else you want to add? Anything you want to say?
Well, clearly, if there's anything I do in this on this island of music is promote the idea of live music, performing live music, and being involved in music in general, even if you're just going to sit down and talk about a bunch of pedals, or if you're going to talk about how to play a particular song in a particular way, in a particular style. I just want to tell everyone, pick up an instrument. If you haven't picked up a guitar yet, I don't care if you're in your 60s, pick it up. My father started piano when he was in his early 60s. He enjoyed it. He really enjoyed it. It's a great way to express yourself. It's a great way to escape. And if you have the luxury of finding a group of people that you want to play with and they're on the same page, there's nothing better.
Just do it.
Honestly, there's nothing better.
Alright, switch o rato back no papiamento. Começa a marcha daqui, essa aqui nos 2 episódios, nós estamos aqui na rato com Alex Bowen, nos papi de vários coisas, de hambúrguer, específico hambúrguer, ato de, of course, de sua história de música, nos papi pouco de sua tata, e como é dentro do mundo de música, dus, trobe, join us, welke episode, nós estamos a uma inta, NPC, e danke na Arushat também para ajudar nos com o programa aqui. And that's it. Regina, me outro. mi te ponete spesere.
Is it? Did you sneak a video of me eating a burger?
No, I had a video of the Bowen burger. We can show you. But
by the way, this is the most amount of burger chat I've had in an interview.